All right, so it's just me today, and I'm going to do a quick entrepreneurship by type session. This is our entrepreneur meetup. I think we're in the fourth week, is that right? As always, you can view previous sessions in the video archive. Yeah, it looks like, scrolling back, it looks like, yeah, we're in week number 4. So today I have the topic of entrepreneurship by type. I want to talk about entrepreneurship as a generator versus manifesting generator, manifester, projector, reflector. This came up over the weekend as I met with an entrepreneur acquaintance who's pretty deep into human design. She happened to be traveling through Santa Fe, and we had a wonderful extended conversation about her business and a number of other aspects. Hey there, Nancy. So I'll just kind of recap. We're going to do entrepreneurship by type today. And so the idea is to talk about how can you use your type, to correctly start things or to correctly fulfill your role, to fulfill your purpose and so on. And this is a very similar question to the question that Ra addressed when he went to look at the 48 combinations of profile and type. So we looked at what's the difference being a 6-2 generator versus a 6-2 manifester or projector or reflector. How about a 5-1? How about a 5-2? Each of these, what it's really getting at is what is the difference between your role, what role you're here to play, and the energy you have to fulfill that role and the mechanics of that energy. So I'm a 5-1 generator, not the most sympathetic connection. Ra was a 5-1 manifester. A lot easier to be a 5-1 manifester in some sense. I don't mean to say that any combination is really easier than the other because there are certain problems that each one is going to run into. But in some sense, being a 5-1 where your role is to universalize things, well, that's easier when you have a motorized throat and no sacral. And so that's the kind of thing we're going to look at today is how do you fulfill your role in the world, which may involve creating new things, creating products, services. I run the HDHD conference, and I'm doing signposts here. How does that role that I play as a 5-1 work with being a generator and some of the difficulties I run into? And then how do I start something as a generator? Or, how would it be different if I were a manifester? So this all came out of some conversations I had over the weekend with a friend who is an entrepreneur, and we were talking about, as a generator, the sense of dread that we get when we have a lot of expectations riding on us, and we're not necessarily energized, like we've agreed to do something, we have to do something, we're kind of being forced to do something, and it's not a natural outcome of our creative response. It's not part of the sacral response. It's like we pre-advertised. She was saying that it's very common in entrepreneurship circles to sell first and build later. And I was saying that's a very manifester approach, that the generator builds first and sells later. But we got into some of the nuances of that because there is a lot of value to testing what the market actually wants. And so as we've talked about in prior entrepreneurship meetups, a lot of times we will actually do a lot of customer development research and interview people and talk to people and kind of learn. And as a generator, that's still very valuable. We're still building something. We're building expertise. We're building a database of customer development interviews. We're building connections and networking and all of these things. So I guess what it really came down to from our conversation was, as generators, we are really here to optimize being able to respond to life. So what waiting to respond means is not waiting for life to begin. What waiting to respond means is optimizing being able to respond. What does it mean to optimize being able to respond? Being available, being accessible. People can reach you. People can text you and you can reply. Having things to respond to, building systems, which is not really our forte as generators, let's admit it. Generators are not the systems builders. That would be more of a projector's job. But having systems in place where we have the kind of life that allows for various stimuli that we can respond to. And what that does is it gives us this sort of optimization to not tying up our time with a ton of scheduled meetings, not tying up. I mean, I'm not against schedules. For some people, that's going to be great to have that scheduled time so you can optimize things to respond to, because you can have people at that time each week or each month or something. I have a lot of scheduled things, but I also realize that it can be really deadening and it can be really difficult. And then I kind of had this profound realization. We were talking about the alternative because she was saying, well, most of these entrepreneurship groups, they recommend selling it first and building it after it's sold. And we were saying how as generators, that just feels so unnatural to us. It's like so bizarre. But at the same time, there is something about that, because then if you actually do have a real need that you're addressing and people are saying we need this from you, you can go, I can do it. Or you can go, that's not for me, because then there's an actual need. It's no longer hypothetical. It's no longer in your head. It's not an imaginary scenario. So at the end of the day, we kind of came around to, well, that could actually be good. It could actually be nice to pre-sell that and then build it later, if that is something that gives you something to respond to. But at the same time, what we were realizing is that manifestors, which is really the model that we all have for success, it's probably a sixth line manifestor who never comes down off the roof. That would be kind of everyone's ideal. Permanent vacation, permanent success, permanent owning of the means of production and things like that. Everyone, when you ask them what they want to do, they kind of want to be wealthy enough to not have to work. Well, that's not really a good generator goal. We need to work. It feels good for us to work. But a lot of people, that is their goal. But if we look at that sort of conditioned thing, what that's saying is the manifestor actually really works at the surface. They work at the surface of the appearance. And they are basically like an impresario or an entertainer on stage. I mean, when you think of manifestor, think of like vaudeville. Think of the entertainer. Think of a stand-up comedian. Think of somebody who gets out there on stage and wows the audience. And this is kind of the model of the manifestor. It took me a while to realize this, because I always previously had kind of imagined manifestors as these like CEOs or kings and queens who are kind of behind the scenes and stuff. And then I was like, no, actually, the classic manifestor persona is actually the entertainer on stage. And what they're doing is working at that surface level. The throat is like the center closest to the surface. And they're working at that level of appearances. And they're really crafting the appearance, crafting the packaging, the marketing, crafting the communication. Manifestors are all about communication, crafting the sharing, how it's being shared. And it really is kind of at that front line surface level that manifestors work. So for a manifestor, it's perfectly natural to announce something that hasn't been built yet. And then everyone pays you and then you build it. That's the old model. You sell them a bunch of books. Well, guess what? Those books haven't been made. They give you the money and then you go get the books printed. That's the manifestor way. So we were kind of realizing that for generators, it's really stressful to have all of this expectation that you have to commit all of this energy to work. Even a defined ego generator, it's not an ego thing. It's how the sacral life force energy works. That the life force energy of the sacral center is made to essentially be able to navigate life through response. And manifestors don't have that, so they're not as stressed out by having the expectation to deliver on some goods. They can announce something and really work on the announcement and not really worry so much about the building of it. An example would be, it's so funny how this happened. The Human Design Platform launched around the same time Signpost did. Complete coincidence. We'd both been working on it for years. It was just the same wavelength. Well, interesting connection, because Alokanand Diaz, he's a 1-3 manifestor. So his role as a first line is very different from my role as a fifth line. His role is not to universalize and to reach a whole bunch of people and stuff like that. But as a manifestor, he is so much better equipped to announce. He's better equipped to get people's attention. He's better equipped to package and build the anticipation and excitement. He had a multi-week marketing campaign where every day it would drip new information and it would kind of build the excitement and build the buzz. And so he really had everything front loaded at the surface, front loaded at the level where you meet somebody. And it was very well presented, very well packaged, easy to share, great communication. But it's such a different thing because his role ultimately is to have a solid foundation for himself. He's a 1-3. Ultimately, that's the joke, is that all the teaching he does is really for him. He's just teaching himself to be a better teacher. Now, we benefit from that. We get tremendous benefit from that. He's one of the best, if not the best, human design teachers in the world. And yet, that benefit that we get is secondary because his life purpose is fulfilled through him teaching himself and learning his own solid foundation. And so as a manifester, he was really good at building the buzz and so on. But at the end of the day, his goal is not to universalize human design. And his goal is not to reach a ton of people. His goal is to get a solid foundation himself. And what involves that solid foundation? Making enough money to keep getting the solid foundation, having enough students so he can keep teaching as a way of himself learning, becoming more of a master, more of a specialist, and so on. Those are the things that are really feeding his process, and that's what his role is in the totality as a 1-3. My role as a 5-1 is very different. My role as a 5-1 is a transpersonal role. I mean, any business I take a part in, any entrepreneurship venture, anything really has to be about the other person. It can't be about me making money. It can't be about me getting my stability and my solid foundation. I mean, yeah, I have a first line unconscious that supports me. That's a supportive thing. That's not the point. The point is the fifth line. And so as a fifth line, any business venture I undertake is going to really have to be about reaching and helping other people in some practical way. And if it's not doing that, then I failed, because honestly, the money is just an excuse for me to try to actually help them. It's not about, making a bunch of money. If it were, I would just still be working at Amazon, or I would have stayed at one of the startups I made. But it's about what can I do to actually make a difference, and that's the fifth line rule. However, as a generator, I can have an idea about something I can do to make a difference and not have the energy for it for 10 years. I can want something and not have the energy for it because I can't make it happen. I can't force it to happen. And I'm kind of unable to properly communicate even, or, anytime I've tried to sell something before doing it, it hasn't really worked out right for me. I think some people can. Some generators probably can. Some manifesting generators, sure. Like, if you're able to sell something and then go build it, great. Maybe the selling of it gives you something to respond to build it. But by and large, most generators are trying to play manifester. So they're going out there with this idea of like, I'm going to sell this thing and people are going to buy it, and then I'm going to build it if they buy it. And that's pretty backwards. I think the real question as a generator is, would you be happy if you couldn't ever work another day in your life with the work you've already done? Was it satisfying enough? And did it fulfill your purpose enough? So in other words, are you proud of your work? And I don't mean like defined ego proud. I just mean, can you stand by your work, and was your work so satisfying to you that you can enjoy the buzz and the glow of having done the work? Or were you stuck in some means to the end thinking? Because the means to an end thinking is not the generator way. The generator way is the journey, right? As you're doing it, you're optimizing the ability to respond as you go. You're reserving the right to change your decision. You're reserving the right to, to develop it, to continue responding, and you're kind of building a life that allows you to continue responding rather than locking yourself in to something that you have to live up to, some expectations that you have to live up to. So if I had to summarize, I would say the manifestor way is the mastery of the surfaces, the mastery of the communication, the mastery of the marketing, the mastery of the advertising, the mastery of the sharing. All of this is throat stuff. The mastery of optimizing announcements to have the highest impact. The mastery of the timing of when to initiate something to have the highest impact. The optimization of the delivery of the thing. And that's the manifestor way. And the manifestor way is essentially to initiate something before it's been built, and then the building follows the initiation. The generator way, that's to be initiated. Generators have to be initiated. Something initiates them that they respond to. So the generator way, the optimization for the generator is to optimize your life so that it's no longer so full that you're not able to respond because you're not available to even have something to respond to. Now, the manifesting generator I include as a type of generator. I don't think it's a fifth aura type. I still include it as a generator, but I would say that maybe they have some ability, once they've responded into something and entered into something through response, to then channel switch a little more than a generator can. Like maybe they're able to kind of be like, okay, this is half finished. Let's cut it here and go on to the next thing. Cut our losses and move on. The projector. I got a lot of flack for this. I said the projector needs to be on the scene. And the response I got was that, hey, that takes a lot of energy, and projectors are not here to spend energy. They're here to conserve energy and only spend energy when they've been invited and rewarded and all this stuff. My answer was, why does being on the scene require energy? If the projector is so inefficient that it takes a lot of their energy to be sort of, I was using the term on the scene, but really to be part of the group that they are becoming an expert in, why is that taking so much energy? So I think the projector as a non-energy type is not here to spend a lot of energy. I'm not saying that, but they are here to be on the scene because so many projectors shoot themselves in the foot by not being kind of a part of the group that they really want to succeed at. Like if you're in human design and you're a projector, you should be a part of the communities, the real life and virtual communities that human design people are a part of. And you should be building those relationships with the people in those communities. And that's how you're going to get the recognition and the invitation. You're going to get that through being a part of those communities, through being on the scene. If you're a reflector, this was a really interesting one. I had to think about, what is it that you're really doing if you're starting a business as a reflector? I think you're really optimizing for being able to sample and optimizing for being able to work with a lot of different people and not be bothered by them, and to sort of optimize for being able to be a part of the spirit of the place that is so important to you. So like if I were a reflector in human design, I would move to Santa Fe because we have so many human design people here, and I would become a pillar of the community here. That's what reflectors really get to do. They get to really become like a mascot or a pillar of a certain place because they're able, with their undefined G center, to kind of see what the right place is for them by seeing where they feel most comfortable. That's what they can trust, and deconditioning from always looking for a better place, right? But just kind of learning and gaining that wisdom. And then they're here to really share their wisdom with the people there and to be able to take in the other people of that community and kind of be the spiritual barometer of the place, and to notice when the place gets too greedy, or when the people there get too greedy, or notice when they're being sincere or insincere or loving or hateful or any of these things. So if I just had to summarize, I would say that I see the generator's way as the way of the builder. I see the manifestor's way as the way of the impresario, the sort of master of surfaces. I see the projector's way as the systems specialist who has to learn every last thing about the system they're a part of. They have to know all the people there. They have to be a part of the community that they're really mastering, and then they'll get all the invitations and they'll get all the recognition. And then the reflector really has to be in the right place more than anyone, because they become and take on the qualities of the spirit of that place, and they become the barometer for the spiritual development of that place. So those are kind of my 4 versions of entrepreneurship by type. And I guess the only other piece is to consider profile, because that really has to do with your role and what role you're playing in the totality, in the bigger picture. And so you combine those things, type and profile, and you really get a powerful picture of how a person is designed to launch their business, carry out their business day-to-day operations, provide services and products to people. Who are their customers supposed to be? Where is their business supposed to be based? Where is the right place for them to be? Because the where and the who are inextricably linked. and ultimately how they're here to fulfill their purpose. And business is actually a big part of fulfilling purpose. It's a really big part of it because it's really what allows us to all come together. You know, Ra liked to say that money was the most sacred thing because it was the unifying force of the entire planet. And if you think of religion and spirituality as unifying, you know, I guess the term means even binding. If you think of like religion as the classic term to bind together and bring together, what actually brings us all together? A unified form of exchange that we call money. And so this work that we're doing, which involves the exchange of money and the exchange of energy and all of these things, is actually not so different from spiritual work. Spiritual work doesn't only happen in the monasteries, it also happens in the marketplace. So that's my presentation for today. If you have anything you'd like to share, Nancy, I'd love to hear it. If not, we can cut it short, and I will be back in about 40 minutes for Human Design Catalyst tonight, where we'll be looking at the 62 evolutionary steps, kind of a fun topic. But I'm also open floor if there's anything. Okay, well then that's fine then. Well, thank you for joining, and yeah, kind of a short one today, just some stuff that was kind of on my mind, and I think we pretty much covered the bases. Thank you for that sweet comment, Nancy, and I will see you in about 40 minutes if you're still around. We'll be doing Human Design Catalyst. The topic will be the 62 evolutionary steps. I posted some graphics from that in my Discord room. You can check out some original graphics I made, and we'll be sharing them in the Human Design Catalyst as well. So hope to see you then.